Welcome, everyone. I'm Lou, and this is Deciphered, the podcast where we take cryptic topics and break them down to ease their complexity. I'd like to first start off with a quote from Socrates, the Greek philosopher. Beauty is short-lived tyranny. What do you think he meant by that? Beauty and tyranny shouldn't be in the same sentence, let alone in the same thought. In case you're wondering what this topic of discussion is going to be about, well, if you guess tyrants, or tyranny, or dictatorship, you're right on the money. I don't know if any of you remember or even saw this short-lived television series called Tyrant, which mirrored the events of the Arab Spring. It brought an American family, a rich American family, into a world of corruption and deceit and a Middle Eastern dictatorship, you could say. Now, while we associate tyranny as evil, the definition is a little more broader, in a sense. Here, I'll enlighten you what the definition means. A tyrant, Greek for tyrannos, in the modern English usage of the word, is an absolute ruler unrestrained by law or person, or one who has usurped, which means pretty much taken over by force, legitimate sovereignty. Often described as a cruel character, a tyrant defends their position by oppressive means, tending to control almost everything in the state. Now, the original Greek term, however, merely meant a authoritarian sovereign without reference to character. Now that paints this in a different view, wouldn't you say? Your whole life you have watched, television news reports about the Arab Spring, or you might have heard of it, pretty much anything that has to do with a revolution outside of the United States. Well, actually, we have a good example. We had a revolution here, the American Revolution, where we kicked out the oppressive king and queen authority of the United States and replaced it with our own government. In our case, it worked, for better or worse, and now today we are the United States, officially. Other places still held on to their monarchy, still have kings and queens, dictators, but as time goes on, as people, think for themselves, they, it just spells disaster for the ones in charge. You have things like anarchy happen, chaos, and then, revolution. People want change, people want freedom, and sometimes there's a clash of ideals, which is what brings this on. Throughout modern time, revolutions were always, portrayed as the lonely, starving rebels fighting off the oppressive tyrants of the ruling country. Sometimes they'd be successful, sometimes not so much. Or they find common ground and split a country in half. As I mentioned before, the Arab Spring, this was, I think, a great showcase of this, where you had the people tired of being under someone's thumb who's been in charge forever and sticking with the same rules, and it just gets old. So what do? You risk your life by revolting and trying to change for the better. In some cases, this worked. Libya had a successful revolution, in theory, by removing its oppressive ruler. However, there wasn't a structure put in place, and today things are a little chaotic. The country doesn't have a stable government, and things are falling apart. Now, throughout North Africa and the Middle East, for example, you had Tunisia, which their revolution was successful. Egypt is another, Egypt was flip-floppy. you had a successful revolution, and the military got involved. They were a part of it, actually. They didn't like who was, officially elected, so they intervened again, and, it's kind of a mess, but stable at the same time. It's, those politics regarding North Africa and Middle East are of complex, and I don't even think I could touch that. I mean, you would need like a degree in politics or something of that nature, and the gift of the silver tongue to settle all those disputes. In modern sense, like I said, tyranny or tyrants in general, or portrayed as these warmongers, just oppressive as oppressive gets. Further examples, obviously Saddam Hussein, his regime, the regime of the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad, and to an extent, the Iranian leadership. And, well, if you're on the other side of the boat, I guess America might come off as oppressive. I mean, doesn't take a genius to flip on CNN or the news and seeing some kind of minority, just not being dealt the right cards in this day and age in free America. But that's another time, another place for that topic. Just for the record, I'm not defending or, showcasing tyranny, aside from just talking about it and trying to, find the true meaning and its archaic meaning, actually, which is quite different than what we think it is. I mean, I think one can truly call someone a tyrant if you gas your own people. There's no pure and clear example than the destruction and suppression of different groups and people with their own opinion trying to get a word in. That, I believe, is true tyranny right there. However, now, in the classical periods, archaic time, Greece is a good example to switch gears for you. The, I don't want to say positive view of tyranny, but a different meaning and state of mind. In the, larger Greek world, before Rome was the big bosses of the ancient world, you had Greece, which, if you know anything about Alexander the Great, you know how they stretched and conquered most of the known world, aside from the Persians. The Greeks were very spread out, a lot towards the east, what is today's Turkey, and parts of the Middle East, and southern Italy and Sicily, actually. This is where the other form of tyranny takes shape. You see, these specific areas of Italy and Sicily were called Magna Graecia, which means Greater Greece, because of the high level of Greek immigrants floating to these regions of Italy. Now, these leaders of these city-states were called tyrants. Were they mean? Were they cruel? Heavy-handed? Well, yeah, if you look at them, sure, they had, rules just like every other leader. However, they weren't regarded to today's, mass murderer dictators. Now, these guys were politicians. They were opportunists, leaders, who wanted nothing more than to see their city thrive. Now, obviously, like I said, they all had rules, and if you broke them rules, things wouldn't turn out well for you, But where this separates from the modern vision of tyranny is they were, like I said, more like leaders. The Greek tyrants of Sicily were in their own right presidents, generals, and, like I said, leaders. Was there oppressive means to gain victories, or, for the people to better understand, who are the pants. Yeah, but, you see the same thing today, to a more or less extent. But with that, you have free will, Some people won't always agree with you. Some people will take Tyrant and turn it on its head and make it a bad thing. And that's obviously, it usually goes in that direction anyway. You can't help it. It's going to go that way if you, keep the ruling thumb under the people in a negative light. While the tyrants of the ancient period weren't as cruel as, say, the military dictators of today, they were pretty rough. They had their own means of laying down the law and such. And by the time Rome came around, well, that starts to paint a picture of what's to come, pretty much. Especially when you have opposition against, the local tyrant or leader or whatever form of government that's currently in charge. You're going to have people that don't like that think they're being oppressed or suppressed, or, just want a different way of life, more options. The longer one stays in power, I believe you will lose grip of the point you were trying to get across. And in the end, it will definitely take a turn for worse. Sometimes you just have to pass the torch on to someone greater. Hopefully will, envision how you thought things to be, just in a greater light. Deep down inside, though, I think there's a little of a tyrant in all of us. I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way. Like I said, the Greek term for tyrant meant, a little different than the, dictator, tyrant type of today. If any of us were given the opportunity to lead, we would do our best. We would try to be fair, try to be reasonable, and, take command where it need be. But out of the 50 people that do listen to you, there's another 50 that, thinks you're crazy. And once again, conflict arises, and you have to know how to deal with that. So, tyrants, are they misunderstood creatures, or creatures of habit? Here's another little quote from Niccolo Machiavelli, Italian philosopher, among other things. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. Short but strong quote. And what I think he was trying to get across there was, it's just not easy leading. It's just not that easy leading. Because you could come in with the best of intentions, leading a city, state, or government, but you could be casted down as some oppressive tyrant because you're misunderstood, or, like I said, the opposition just doesn't like what you're trying to convey to the people. And with that said, I'm going to bring in another quote from an American founding father and the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppression of the body and mind will vanish, like evil spirits at the dawn of day. Now, that particular quote, I think Jefferson was trying to say pretty much, treat the people like you would treat your family, with care, dignity, and respect. Spread the words of love and prosperity to the people, and not toxic ideology. If we could change ourselves for the better, tyranny itself will be a fragment of our past. And with that, you'll thrive. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, take care.